The US did something massive to stop Iran's terror in Hormuz. US warships passed through the Strait of Hormuz for the first time in months, cornering Iran. But this was only the beginning. The military force flowing into the region is much bigger and multi-layered. The IRGC Navy had published a threatening declaration to all world vessels on open frequencies on May 3, 2026. Attention all vessels, this is Iranian Stepan Navy. If you see any warship in your vicinity, keep a distance more than 10 miles from them, because I'm ready to open fire on them without any warning. They had announced that ships wishing to pass through the strait could only use the corridor designated by Iran, that any ship deviating from this route would be considered a threat, and that it would be met with a firm response from the Revolutionary Guards. And this threat was working. For more than 2 months, approximately 23,000 civilian sailors from 87 countries had been held hostage in the Gulf for exactly this reason. The IRGC was using these people as a bargaining chip, trapping sailors from countries with no connection to the conflict simply because it could. But at least 10 civilian sailors had lost their lives in the process. This declaration was essentially an official ultimatum, emphasizing that any contrary action would be considered a direct threat and met with a decisive military response. On May 4, 2026, the US moved to break this picture. Iran had broken the ceasefire and launched attacks on ships in the Gulf and on the UAE, but the US responded with a cool and professional countermove. Project Freedom had begun. 3 destroyers advanced toward Hormuz. An air protection umbrella consisting of F-35B stealth fighters and AH-64 Apache attack helicopters was established above them. And the corridor declared by the IRGC was completely ignored. The IRGC responded instantly. It activated its naval radars, sent warnings to the American destroyers, and deployed its speedboats into the sea. But these boats did not head directly toward the US warships. They spread toward commercial cargo ships, trying to transit through the strait. The aim was probably to create panic by paralyzing civilian traffic. This calculation completely backfired. Apache and Seahawk helicopters launched from the destroyers locked onto the Iranian boats. Against advanced thermal optics and smart munitions, the small boats were sunk within seconds. A total of 7 IRGC fast attack boats were destroyed. There wasn't a single scratch on the US side, and what happened next was the IRGC's worst nightmare. 2 US-flagged commercial ships successfully passed through Hormuz under escort. 3 destroyers positioned in the Persian Gulf. The US is now patrolling the strait where the IRGC had said, "Whoever enters cannot leave." Secretary of State Marco Rubio stated clearly at the press conference that the operation was defensive in nature, but that retaliation would follow any attack. And he announced that the 7 Iranian boats that ignored warnings were now lying on the seabed along with the rest of Iran's navy. The declaration the IRGC had issued 3 days earlier had effectively been thrown in the trash. So did the IRGC actually have the power to stop this passage? The answer to this question lies in objectively examining Iran's remaining coastal power in Hormuz. According to AOL's Keshem Island analysis, the underground missile complexes and shelters on Iran's strategic island are still in place. According to Iran Press's February 16, 2026 report, the coastal anti-ship missiles and kamikaze drones demonstrated in the IRGC's Smart Hormuz control drills are designed for short-range operations in narrow waters. Mine-laying capacity is also technically available, but there appears to be a deep gap between this capacity on paper and reality on the ground. The IRGC's famous swarm tactic collapsed against Apache helicopters. The conventional navy had been largely destroyed in earlier phases of the war. According to the Times of Israel's May 4th report, the IRGC attempted a limited intervention but avoided a full-scale attack. The layered air shield established by the US may constitute an impossible barrier for Iran. F-35B stealth fighters are invisible to Iranian radars and possess day-night precision strike capability. Apache helicopters provide 24-hour thermal surveillance. Under this superiority, every missile or drone launched from shore can be detected and intercepted in advance. And launching a full-scale naval battle would also risk Iran's own economy, which is already losing $500 million a day under the blockade. This would be strategic suicide. The Hormuz card that the IRGC had used for years to hold the world hostage has practically lost its effectiveness. And the US didn't just neutralize this card, it is pouring an even larger force into the region. The 3 destroyers that broke through Hormuz were only the beginning. The military force flowing into the region under Project Freedom is much bigger and multi-layered. The amphibious assault ship USS Boxer, leading the 11th Marine Expeditionary Unit, MEU, departed from San Diego with 2,500 Marines and full combat equipment on board. It is expected to reach the Sea of Oman shortly. And Boxer is not alone. According to Army recognition, the 31st MEU, led by USS Tripoli, is already in the region and participating in the blockade. Photos in circulation confirm that both ships are in full combat formation with F-35B stealth fighters on their decks. With the 2 groups merging, more than 4,000 Marines are standing by on amphibious ships. This directly completes the logistics infrastructure for a potential coastal operation or landing scenario. But the amphibious groups are only one part of this picture. According to the War Zone, the USS Abraham Lincoln and USS George H.W. Bush carrier strike groups are already positioned in the Arabian Sea. Together with the 3 destroyers that broke through Hormuz, the total US warship presence in the region reaches 3 carrier groups and numerous destroyers and frigates. These ships are equipped with Aegis combat systems, possessing both air defense and cruise missile capability. According to WBAL's report, 2,200 additional Marines and 3 more Navy ships are on the agenda for deployment to the Middle East. Images shared by US Marine Corps Command confirm that units are in preparation. Beneath the surface, a silent deterrent is in play. The US nuclear submarine fleet never officially discloses its movements in the region, but analysts assess that at least one Ohio-class guided missile submarine is positioned near the Persian Gulf. Each capable of carrying 154 Tomahawk cruise missiles, these submarines pose a threat that no Iranian radar can detect. The US has also initiated mine-clearing operations to secure the Strait Passage. According to CBS News, mines that the IRGC may have laid in Hormuz are being swept with specially equipped vessels. This is the precondition for commercial traffic to normalize. In the air, the flow of power is not stopping. C-17 Globemaster strategic transport aircraft are carrying munitions and equipment. The large US tanker fleet is refueling fighter jets mid-air. And F-15, F-16, and F/A-18 fighter jets launching from Gulf bases are monitoring the region 24 hours a day. This is where the F-35B factor completely changes the equation. These aircraft are invisible to Iranian radars, possessing day-night precision strike capability. They are an ideal tool for hardened targets like the underground bases on Keshem Island, the port facilities at Bandar Abbas, and the IRGC's coastal missile ramps. And their ability to operate simultaneously from 2 separate amphibious platforms may effectively blind Iran's entire air defense and surveillance systems. The entire logistics chain, from the Pacific to the Indian Ocean, from there to the Sea of Oman, once again proves the US capability for rapid global power projection. A sustainable supply line has been established through Guam and Hawaii. And this massive force is approaching Iran's shores minute by minute. And within this looming colossal force lies yet another brand new and massive element that will completely rewrite the rules of the game. But the US is not content with just its existing forces. It is also preparing to deploy a massive element that will fundamentally shake all geopolitical balances on the field. CENTCOM is planning to deploy Dark Eagle hypersonic missiles to the Middle East for a possible deep strike against Iran. This development changes everything on the military chessboard. Until now, Iran had been pursuing a strategy of using its own geographic expanse as a shield. Beyond trusting its fast boats and drones, its real guarantee was taking its long-range ballistic missile launchers away from Gulf shores and hiding them deep in the country and in mountainous regions. The Tehran administration believed that by positioning these launchers beyond the range of the American military's conventional Tomahawk cruise missiles, it could comfortably target US bases in the Gulf, Arab countries, and Israel from safe zones. But the dead ends of this strategy are obvious. The deployment of the Dark Eagle system to the field can solve Iran's threat equation in an instant. Traveling at over 5 times the speed of sound, Mach 5+, and capable of making complex maneuvers to evade air defense systems as it approaches its target. This technology demolishes the depth defense doctrine. This is exactly why Dark Eagle can arrive as a game-changer to the region. Iran's bunkers carved into mountains or mobile launchers will not escape being targeted against this enormous kinetic energy and speed. The regime can neither hide from these weapons nor stop them with its outdated air defense systems. The logistical infrastructure of this massive military preparation is also being woven without. In the air corridor between Europe and the Middle East, C-17A heavy transport aircraft are in constant flight. On a single day alone, 11 C-17 aircraft were observed departing from Ramstein and Lakenheath, carrying cargo on routes to the eastern Mediterranean, Jordan, and Qatar. Turkey's Incirlik Air Base has become one of the most critical springboards of this massive air bridge. C-17s, C-130s, and refueling aircraft complete their logistical preparations here before transitioning to strategic points like Djibouti and Diego Garcia. It appears Washington is not conducting a short-term show of force in the region. Rather, it is building the supply chain for a possible operation that could last months on solid foundations. The reality that Tehran must contend not just with regional allies, but with a global logistics highway is deepening the panic within the administration even further. The US Gulf strategy is not limited to its own navy. It is equipping its allies with a massive military shield. According to Al Jazeera's March 19, 2026 report, a $16.5 billion arms sale to Gulf states was approved. THAAD missile defense reinforcement and F-16 munitions to the UAE, Patriot renewal and tank supply to Saudi Arabia. The Al Dhafra Air Base in the UAE serves as the main logistics hub for US forces in the region. The UAE's own F-16 Block 60 fighter jets, versions equipped with more advanced intelligence capability than America's own F-16s, are a critical part of this defense shield. The layered defense system operates on 3 separate tiers. THAAD intercepts ballistic threats at the upper layer, Patriot covers the mid-altitude, and counter-drone systems shoot down even Iran's cheapest weapons. The field impact of this technology transfer is visible in concrete terms, as every wave Iran launches at the UAE is intercepted mid-air. While the US equips its allies to this depth, every Iranian attack attempt depletes its own resources, while the other side's defense only gets stronger. And why Iran directed these attacks at the UAE deserves separate examination. The IRGC, unable to muster the courage to directly attack US destroyers, turned its rage toward the UAE on May 4, 2026, launching 5 waves of missile and drone attacks. On May 5th, the attacks continued for a second day. In the final wave of attacks alone, 8 ballistic missiles and 20 drones were launched, all intercepted mid-air. These attacks probably had 2 aims. First, to draw the US attention from the Strait to the UAE and ease Hormuz pressure. But the US did not fall for this trap. Second, to strike the UAE's ADCOP bypass terminal in Fujairah, the only major infrastructure enabling the UAE to export oil directly without going through Hormuz. Saudi Arabia's Yanbu pipeline had also been hit previously. The message was probably, if we can't export, your billion-dollar bypass routes aren't safe either. But this strategy also appears to be collapsing. Every failed wave erodes Iran's missile stockpiles, and resupply under sanctions is becoming increasingly difficult. And the US may have completely sabotaged the hostage-taking strategy that the IRGC imposed with its May 3rd declaration through this operation. The regime's "we speak, the world listens" perception was shattered overnight. And the economic front running alongside the military operations may be hurting Iran even more than the missiles. The Operation Epic Fury, Economic Fury Operation, announced by Rubio as part of the Pentagon briefing reported by Mario Norful, has effectively paralyzed Iran's trade capacity. 90% of Iran's trade has been stopped. It is costing the regime $500 million a day. Inflation has soared to the 70% band. The rial is in free fall, and the scope of sanctions is expanding. Any foreign financial institution that helps Iran will lose access to the US financial system. Rubio also spoke clearly about the nuclear program. emphasizing that despite Iran's claims of not wanting nuclear weapons, it is building secret enrichment facilities in mountains, holding 60% enriched uranium, and developing long-range missiles. Trump stated that the solution is simple, that the regime needs to surrender, and that if this were a fight, it should have been stopped by now. IDF Chief of Staff Major General Zamir also announced on the same day that their forces are deployed across all sectors and in immediate readiness for any scenario near or far. When assessing this entire picture from a geostrategic perspective, the domino effects of the US breaking through Hormuz go much deeper. The IRGC's biggest card has been practically neutralized. The regime had been holding the region hostage for years by saying, "We'll close the strait," and now the US is freely passing its destroyers through, while the IRGC cannot do anything concrete about it. This situation is also affecting global energy markets. The partial opening of Hormuz has prepared the ground for tanker traffic to resume, carrying the potential to stabilize oil prices that have been escalating during the blockade period. And perhaps the most critical domino effect, the Gulf states uniting against Iran. This US move sent a powerful message to the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and other Gulf states. We are by your side, and the IRGC's threats are not enough to stop you. This confidence injection may have strengthened the Gulf's will to act as one body against Iran. The US combined military power and economic blockade into a single strategy. Project Freedom opened Hormuz. Operation Epic Fury collapsed the Iranian economy. Allies were equipped with $16.5 billion in weapons, and the IRGC's regional terror strategy, naval blockade, missile attacks, holding commercial ships hostage, targeting bypass infrastructure, was neutralized one by one. Iran has three paths ahead, and all three are dead ends. Surrendering collapses the regime's internal structure. Maintaining the status quo means slow death under blockade. Escalating the war is suicide for a regime with no navy, no air power, and no air defense left. The US truly did something massive. It neutralized the Hormuz threat that the IRGC had used for years to hold the world hostage with a single operation. It broke through the strait, sunk the boats, equipped its allies, and collapsed the Iranian economy. And then it poured three carrier groups, more than 4,000 Marines, F-35B stealth aircraft, a submarine fleet, and continuous air resupply into the region. The IRGC's Hormuz card is no longer valid. Its navy is at the bottom. Its economy is shattered. Gulf states have united against Iran. The direction of the war appears clear, and the end of the IRGC's terror strategy may be approaching. So what do you think? Will Iran surrender, or will it sink deeper into this dead end? Share your thoughts with us in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Thank you for choosing us.